Hello everybody and welcome back to another Doctor Who product review. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at yet another 1/6 scale limited edition collector figure from Big Chief Studios. Rather excitingly, the 4th Doctor as portrayed by Tom Baker. Now this 1/6 scale collector figure previously came out quite a number of years ago and it has long sold out. This figure is indeed a part of a brand new series which is exclusive to Zavvi. Rather confusingly, despite being a Zavvi exclusive, a number of stock did also find its way onto the Big Chief official website, and this figure does also have a number of changes compared to the original release. Something of which that I was completely unaware of when purchasing this product a number of years ago, and something of which that I certainly wish I did know, is the fact that Big Chief Studios are not wholly responsible for the production of this product. Basically simplifying it down, Big Chief have handed over the blueprints, the moulds and the tooling for this figure, and then Zavvi have done the rest. Zavvi have selected the factory, Zavvi have put the figure together, and Big Chief have signed off on the final product, which I must admit, I think is rather unusual for something which is meant to be a premium piece of merchandise, and as we will find out throughout this review, that has led to a rather interesting outcome. Despite this involvement, Zavvi's logo is absolutely nowhere to be seen on the box, but Big Chief's logo is basically on every single side, which doesn't exactly help, especially if to say, for example, that this figure wasn't quite up to standards compared to the previous releases. Something of which that I want to mention immediately, because I have no doubt that someone has already probably looked at the duration of this review and rolled their eyes. Yes, this is a very long review, and that's because this is a very interesting product to review, because there is lots of things to talk about from a very critical perspective, and I want to be able to take a look at this figure in a lot of detail to reach what I believe is a fair conclusion, because although this is kind of marketed as a premium product, there is lots of things that I certainly question. As per usual, this Big Chief collector figure comes in your usual shipment crate, which protects the inner box. The very centre of the box contains your usual stamped-on information, including the latest iteration of the Big Chief Studios logo, various product details, as well as which incarnation of the Doctor is within the box. Bringing up a little bit of a screen grab from one of my previous Big Chief Studios reviews, usually these products come wrapped in a rather secure piece of bubble wrap along these lovely plastic corners to ensure that the inner product is kept safe. With this product we have absolutely none of that. It's the first suggestion that this is perhaps a more budget product compared to the previous releases, as it literally looks like it's been whacked in a carrier bag. As we take a further look at the actual packaging itself, once again we have this standardised design which is used for all of the Doctors released as a part of the Zavvi exclusive series. It is quite stylish, however the overall quality of the card again feels a lot cheaper compared to the previous Big Chief releases. At the very top it states that this is a collector's edition 1/6 scale figure. At the very bottom, once again, we have the Big Chief Studios logo. The 13th Doctor era logo is present in the middle of the box, as well as the BBC logo, both in a white typeface. The entirety of the box has a dark blue background, however we have this lovely lighter blue on top, replicating a number of Gallifreyan symbols across the entirety of the box. This, as well as the yellow banding, also continues onto the side. The side logo does appear to be ever so slightly embossed, however this is really subtle. In the very centre we get a little hexagon, as well as the 4th Doctor being present in the middle. Now the way this has been done is basically a separate piece of card is underneath the main box itself, allowing the outer box to be used for all 4 figures as a part of the series. The lid of the box contains these same details once again, and the bottom of the box features your usual company information, along with a sticker in the corner stating again that this is the 4th Doctor, as well as, rather surprisingly, the unique identification number, mine of which being 122, and it doesn't say out of how many. I'm genuinely surprised I have actually included this, because there is no certificate of authenticity with this product. As we turn around to the back of the box, the rest of the Zavvi exclusive Doctors are presented. Each of the Doctors are accompanied by a little write-up as well as an image. Although do be warned, said images are in fact of the original Big Chief exclusive releases that have now long sold out, and not the Zavvi exclusive editions. Figures the likes of the 11th Doctor look significantly different on the Zavvi exclusive, using the Series 7 variation of head and not the original release presented here. Packaging really has been simplified for these releases. It certainly doesn't feel as special as some of the previous ones that we've seen. In fact, also a lot weaker, mine of which arrived damaged. The inner workings of the box have certainly been streamlined here, so we have a piece of card on the top and then underneath the usual tray. I do find this part of the box rather pretty. We have the 4th Doctor in all his glory with that lovely purple vortex in the background, as well as the title at the top. Specifications of which that are usually presented on the main box itself have now been featured on this piece of card, including all the components within the costume, the hairpieces, as well as the accessories and display base. I must admit, when you first open this product, it is certainly a sight to behold, and not in a positive way. The figure just looks like it's rammed in the box. Sadly, they have reduced this down to 1 tray as opposed to the usual Big Chief 2 trays, including the base in the bottom tray along with some of the accessories. So everything is in here, including the hat, the rather minimal accessories that we get. Head and limbs also come packaged in these bags, which annoyingly are taped to the actual figure, which when I was taking these off, a little bit of the material and fabric did actually come away like little strands, which it protects the figure. It's just not done in the best way. Removing the figure reveals the base underneath, and no, that isn't dirt, that is just a protective sleeve that is placed over the top of the base itself. As a simplified and standardised box for all of the Doctors as a part of the Zavvi series, it certainly works. I like the overall colour scheme and style, but the actual feel of the box itself doesn't particularly feel too premium, so if you don't care about packaging, then that is not something to worry about. Maybe I'm being a bit picky. It just doesn't feel as nice and tactile as the previous Big Chief releases. I travelled back to Hosty HQ to pick up this figure originally, so the only pictures I have of the figure straight out of the box are taken from a few weeks ago. As you can hopefully see, the outfit isn't best positioned. The shirt, coat and coat lapels are incredibly warped due to the way that the product has been hastily packaged. This led to me taking off most of the outfit components individually and ironing them in the hope to make the figure look better. After quite a lot of time, precision and effort, hopefully I've made the figure look a little bit more appealing. Sit back, grab yourself a cuppa, I definitely recommend a strong one, and let's start off what is probably going to be one of the most interesting reviews that I've ever done on this channel. So here is the 4th Doctor 1/6 scale collector figure out of the box. And I think that this product is pretty much the definition of a mixed bag because it has a number of positives, but also quite a number of negatives. And I've tried to open up this review with a rather positive position. I think that the figure here definitely looks the part. He looks quite cool. I think that the outfit definitely comes together. And I think that aside from the odd bit here and there, it definitely looks quite cool alongside the other Big Chief Doctors as well. As we will encounter throughout this review, it's when you start to look closer at the costume when questions start to be raised. Something of which that really haunts this figure, especially when compared alongside the other Zavvi exclusive releases, is the fact that this is one of the oldest ever products that Big Chief has made, and sadly there doesn't seem to have been much effort to kind of bear in mind the skills and techniques that Big Chief have learnt over the past few years to ultimately make this figure better. Something of which that also doesn't really help this figure is the fact that I've just finished reviewing both the 3rd and 13th Doctor Big Chief Studios figure releases, and they are some of the best Big Chiefs that have ever been created. Those are the most recent, and this is one of the oldest. I would just like to make clear, especially if you're someone who hasn't really been watching my channel for long, I am a really passionate Doctor Who collector and I've absolutely adored collecting the Big Chief Studios Doctor Who line for quite a number of years. They have created some of the best products that I have within my collection and I've absolutely loved seeing this company flourish with each and every release. It is overall a product that could have been so much better. Especially given the stripped down format that this figure comes in with a cheaper box, stripped back accessories, less swappable hands, I think it is very easy to fit these new Zavvi exclusives into a category of budget releases. I have in fact heard people describe these releases as knockoffs, which was a little bit worrying. But something of which that I'm going to bear in mind throughout the entirety of this review is the fact that the recommended retail for this product is £199. Do you know what? I, like quite a lot of people, actually think that £200 is a lot of money, and you expect quality, you expect a premium product. I know that when I first got my first ever Big Chief figure, it was incredibly daunting because that was so much money to spend on one product, and I would dread to think how I would feel if this was my first ever Big Chief, and £199 is what I paid for it. I'm going to try and be as fair as possible. I'm going to mention the things that Big Chief Studios and Zavvi have done right, and the things that I'm pleased with. But I'm also going to bring to the attention of this review the things which I feel frustrated by, that I feel let down by, and the things which I think could have been done a lot better, and certainly the things that I wouldn't expect from a product with a recommended retail of £200. So the first thing that we're going to be taking a look at with regards to the tailoring on the costume is this giant burgundy coat. Now this is definitely a mixed bag of positives and negatives. It features some lovely detailing, including the likes of the buttons and the pockets, as well as the lining, but also at the same time includes a number of issues, such as the lapels folded wrong, the back of the coat being a bit iffy, and the buttons tending to fall off. Those of you that have collected Big Chiefs in the past, you will know that there is certain materials that are basically a magnet for dust and hair and any microbe possible. This is one of those materials. You do need to take a piece of sellotape to this quite regularly to make it look pristine. As always, I think one of the benefits of using material is that you get this natural flow on the body with the outfit itself, and I think that is particularly relevant here towards the bottom. I love the way that the coat kind of billows out. It definitely gives very dramatic energy. Of course you have the velvet there on the inside, although there's no wiring in this to kind of make it more precisely posed. If the bottom of the coat is giving kind of dramatic energy, then the top is certainly giving kind of baggy, child wearing dad's clothing kind of energy, because it is incredibly baggy, and that is something that the earlier Big Chief figures really do suffer from. So rather unusually, in fact, the top of the shoulder fits rather well. It's just below the shoulder here, but also where the arms kind of start, where it just needs tucking in a bit, made a little bit tighter, just so it has a lot less excess fabric. Very subtly towards the figure's waist, we do also have the inclusion of a stitching line, which does continue all the way around to the back, and is kind of the main reason why the coat billows out towards the bottom. We have what should be a really lovely detailed pleated design, giving the coat this excellent shape. In particular, I love the way that the material creases towards the top. Have a very baggy appearance. It looks okay, it's certainly not the worst aspect of this costume, but it just looks a little bit too baggy. There's definitely too much excess fabric. And then we have this other elephant in the room, and another victim of the fact that this figure has seemingly just been shoved in the box with zero care at all. We have this massive crease which has been put down where the coat is meant to neatly fold. Instead we have this rather ugly looking delve. Conveniently, we have the opposite side of the coat to tell us what this side is meant to look like. So it's a rather straight crease, very neat, running all the way down, and it would look alright if the other side didn't look like this. An absolute war zone with so many creases and wrinkles. I've tried to iron this out, but it seems to form back into this ugly position, which is a shame. I've tried to make this look good on camera, and I think it definitely looks worse on camera. It certainly looks a bit better to the actual naked eye, but we still have that issue of the coat looking incredibly baggy. The lapels have been rather nicely stitched and very neat, I'll give them that. It's just a shame that the shape of them is completely off, and again, when this coat has been put on and the figure has been placed into the packaging, there has been no care at all to actually ensure this is in the right position. So when I first got this product, I spent quite a while trying to iron this down to actually make it look better. From a side profile, you can see that the collar runs around the entirety of the top of the coat, which is in fact rather nice. It certainly stays in place a lot more than the lapels, that for some reason have a habit of pointing upwards. Something which is great to see included, peeling back the coat, we have the addition of the lovely purpley shimmery lining, which we'll be taking a closer look at a little bit later on, once we've removed the coat. On either side of the jacket, we do have the addition of some pockets. Putting this up, it does of course reveal that this pocket is indeed an imitation. With that in mind, I still think they look the part. The ends of the jacket are rather neatly stitched together. Of course we have the suggestion of the cuffs, although I do think the arms are ever so slightly too long, as they do kind of drown out the hands ever so slightly, and we do also have the addition of the buttons, which have a glossy burgundy finish. Although, sadly, on the opposite arm, the cuff of the jacket has sadly been the victim of some rather poor quality control and review. As you can see, the middle button is indeed missing. Now, this is a reoccurring problem, apparently, for these Zavvi exclusives, and usually with the Big Chief figures, this wouldn't be an issue, as they would normally supply a little packet of replacement buttons. But very much like the wrist joints, no replacements and spares have been issued with this figure, so frustratingly you have to make do with what you've got. And believe it or not, I'm rather glad this has happened actually, but also frustrated at the same time, because during filming this review, this main button here, so not even one of the cuff buttons, one of the main visible buttons on the coat is actually dangling off. So I now need to go, in fact there we go, it's fell off. So I'm now going to need to find that and buy some super glue and put it back on. Very frustrating. Right, this is no exaggeration. This is about 6 hours after I previously filmed for this review. I have found it. I have found the button. This is going straight into a bag, and I'll work out what to do with it later. This review will be the death of me. On either side of the coat we do get the inclusion of 3 burgundy buttons. These have simply been glued onto the coat itself. Here is a perfect example of why that is a bad idea, because the buttons do indeed fall off, much like how they have done on the waistcoat as well as the cuffs of the jacket. So this is a figure that I definitely recommend keeping in a glass cabinet as well as being careful with. But that said, to be honest, I have been careful with this figure. I think it is simply the case that the glue isn't the best option, or they should be using stronger glue, because I've not really been rough with this figure. It's just the case that little bits of fabric as well as the buttons have a possibility of falling off, which isn't particularly the best. Normally when I review Big Chiefs, I dedicate quite a bit of time to the colouring and accuracy with the costume. Does it look the part? However, in the context of this review, I feel like talking about the colouring on the coat is almost the least of the worries, especially when you have buttons falling off and the creases being in the wrong place or being sort of manufactured incorrectly. So I think the colouring, it's alright. I think it's a bit much. I think it looks too burgundy, and that's someone who absolutely loves burgundy saying that. One thing that also really doesn't do this coat any favours is I think the coat definitely comes across a lot more vibrant on camera than it does in real life. I think in real life it does look a lot better, but overall the texturing of the coat I think visually just looks a bit too felty. As always, to remove the coat, all you have to do is bend the arms back as so, and then slowly slide the jacket off. It does in fact come off rather easily, and then it reveals everything else underneath. Once the coat has been removed, I always think this is a good opportunity to kind of take a look at the material away from the actual body, to kind of see those details a little bit more clearly. In particular, on the inside, of course, you have that purple lining, which is absolutely beautiful, that lovely shimmer. It really nicely blends with the rest of the kind of felt-like jacket that we have on the front, and it really shimmers in the light. I love the way that it's been stitched together here at the very top, and also it connects to the arms there as well. It's neatness and little details like this which I certainly expect from Big Chief figures. So now that we've taken off the long coat, we can take a closer look at the rest of the outfit components. And very much like the rest of the outfit, this version of the Fourth Doctor has seen a number of revisions, making it different to the original release. Sadly, once again, we have the reoccurring issue of the outfit components simply not being placed onto the body in the correct manner. It's really haphazard, and as a result, from it being transported from the factory to me as a customer, the shirts and everything else seem to be oddly warped and creased, making it very difficult to place in the right position. Overall pattern somewhat looks right, however is a little bit warped in parts. So this pattern is made up of various different shades of yellows, purples, a little bit of red, a little bit of pink in there as well. I think if I was to summarise what the original looked like, it was a lot sharper compared to this version, but again I think it somewhat looks the part. Down the very middle of the waistcoat we do have the addition of the buttons. These have been sculpted in a lighter brown plastic, although sadly I have seen a number of Zavvi Fourth Doctors where the buttons have fell off, very much like how mine has on the cuff of the jacket. I do like the way that the waistcoat drapes over the trousers, very much like how it would within real life, and we do also have the suggestion of a pocket, of course with that small rectangular piece of material. Pocket is also present on the opposite side, although to note these are indeed imitation and do not work. Something that the waistcoat does do very well is hiding the little pop buttons that we have underneath and ultimately holds the waistcoat in place. So these are of course affixed to either side, and to detach it is very simple. There we go. It's certainly one of the stronger elements within the outfit. I think the pattern certainly looks the part, although sadly it's not as vibrant as the original release, and the addition of the buttons is great. I'm very happy that mine actually has all the buttons, and of course the detailing on the pockets of either side also look quite nice as well, and I think that it overall sits on the body in quite a neat manner. The front out of the way, now let's flip around to the back of the waistcoat. Now very much like the Eighth Doctor, we have the addition of this rather kind of dark bronzy finish, and a rather unusual design. So before we take a look at the elephant in the room, it is a really lovely material. It's stitched together quite well, the colouring is quite nice, it certainly looks the part, and as always, the fact that it is material creates some lovely natural creasing surrounding the body. And then we move on to this. So we have the belt along the bottom of the waistcoat. Unlike some of the previous releases, this doesn't have a buckle on or anything like that, it's simply a piece of material which has been stitched onto the waistcoat. As you can see on this side we have this rather neat stitching line which is not too far along the belt here. And then flipping around to the opposite side we have what I assume is the belt stitched in completely the wrong place. And due to this quite evidently creates this rather bold crease which runs across the entirety of the back of the waistcoat in a diagonal fashion, which isn't meant to be there. It's meant to look like this, but it doesn't. Now, I am rather thankful that this is on the back of the waistcoat as opposed to, say, something more visible like the front of what is otherwise a rather nice component within the outfit, but I would just like to stress that that is not the point. It's still completely stitched in the wrong place, and I would just like to remind you once again, very much like how I have done throughout this review, that the recommended retail price for this product is £199. When you take the waistcoat off, it becomes even more apparent that the waistcoat is stitched in entirely the wrong place. I mean, look at that underneath. Massive crease, lovely jubbly, not happy. This is a quality control issue which should have been noticed within the factory. It shouldn't have been sent out to me as a customer, and this is not what I expect from a premium product. Right then, should we take Tom Baker's waistcoat off to see what's underneath? Because I'm quite surprised to actually say that there is some further details. So popping off the waistcoat, it basically reveals the rest of the cravat, and most surprisingly, braces. Giving credit where credit is due, the braces are lovely. They're made of like an elasticated material, which I do believe has been present on a number of big chiefs in the past, and we do also have this little metal buckle holding them in place. Towards the bottom, we do of course have the connector piece to the trousers, so we have some black material coming up to the side, as well as a little black hook holding all of the pieces of material together. Flipping the figure around to the back, the braces continue to impress, as we have further pleather bits of material holding all of the straps in place. These are really neat, and it's a shame that braces like this didn't come with the Big Chief 13th Doctor, because for those of you that have watched my review of that product, you will know those braces were basically doomed to fail. They weren't holding anything in place. I originally needed to glue them back together, but thankfully the braces on this figure are much better. It's just a shame that we didn't get to see them with 13, perhaps having just this white material, but instead with that yellowy coloured finish, it would have looked alright. As for the white shirt, there's nothing really that I can say about this. I'm pretty sure it's the same basic white shirt that has come with multiple Big Chief Doctors in the past. Rather frustratingly, given the fact that this shirt is basically hidden, all of the buttons are present and correct. These have been sculpted in a white plastic this time round. There is also some considerably neat stitching around the cuffs. On the opposite side you get the inclusion of a further white button as well as the actual functional button underneath, which holds the two panels of the shirt together in a rather neat fashion. Again, sadly, the fact that the clothing has basically been thrown onto the 1/6 scale body from what appears to be several thousand miles away, it does have this unusual, rather baggy, creased finish where it's kind of in places that it shouldn't be, but because this is mostly hidden by the rest of the outfit, it doesn't bug me as much as the coat and the waistcoat. Ho-ho, but I tell you what does bug me, and is very visible, it is the collar of the shirt. Now this is one of the victims of basically pushing the clothing onto the body in the factory and not actually caring if it is in the right place, because it ends up creasing the material and it ends up fixing in place where it shouldn't be. So we have this massive ugly crease again around what is meant to be the collar of the shirt. This is of course meant to flap down as so, but no matter what, no matter how much I try and fix this, it does always tend to pop back up again, which is a little bit annoying. But thankfully, of course, the Doctor does have a scarf, so you can somewhat hide it. Finally, for this section of the outfit, we have the cravat. Now, I do believe that this is made of a slightly different coloured material compared to the initial release. I want to say it's darker. The original, I think, was a bit more vibrant. I think it looks alright. I think it looks the part. It has a nice sheen to it due to the material that it's been made from. And I also think the knot at the top also looks very precise. It's just a shame that the shirt underneath isn't. So before we move down the figure to take a look at the trousers and shoes and everything else, we're going to take a look at the 4th Doctor's scarf, a pretty iconic component within his outfit. I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest expert on the Fourth Doctor's scarf. I think, again, it certainly looks the part, it gets the idea, but ultimately that is not what we want from a Big Chief figure. We accuracy as closest to the actual TV prop. So you have a series of different colours, lots of more lighter, kind of washed out purples, pinks, greens, a little bit of kind of grey and cream in there as well. I think for the scale, the tassels are somewhat impressive, of course replicated using cream and vibrant yellow material. So you have all the drips, they're coming around towards the bottom. These have been simply tied onto the end of the scarf, and again they do kind of look the part. Of course, one of the most notable inaccuracies with this scarf is that the scarf within the TV show is made of wool, and this isn't made of wool, it is simply a printed material. Apparently wool is very, very difficult to replicate within the 1/6 scale without literally hand knitting a little woolen scarf. As well as being quite complex, I imagine it would also be pretty expensive, and as a result, probably not very viable. So it is in fact a very long material, it barely even fits into the review stage, and width-wise, I would say it is perhaps a little bit too wide. As you can see here, towards this section, I've in fact divided it into a half, so I've kind of bent it in the middle and tried to iron this in place, simply just to make it look a bit more in scale. And here is the result, and it is a little bit of a blessing in disguise, as I have already mentioned, because due to the width of the scarf and the scale, it does somewhat hide the vast majority of the costume, which certainly does the figure favours because it ultimately hides a lot of the mistakes that have been made in the factory. And of course, it doesn't have a wiring either. The original one did, meaning that you could kind of flex the scarf into multiple different dramatic positions. This one simply floats down the body. Whether this is a positive or a negative, I think is completely down to personal preference on if you like wires within your 1/6 scale figures or not. I think sometimes they can be quite useful. I think one of the positives is certainly make the scarf flow a lot more naturally, but if you want more dramatic windswept positions, then this scarf isn't going to do that. So whilst the long coat is removed, this provides a good opportunity to take a look at the Fourth Doctor's trousers. Now these are somewhat covered when the costume is fully together because the coat naturally comes to around here, and I have heard mixed things about these trousers compared to the original release. They are made of a rather unusual material. Overall, the trousers do feel very soft, almost like very woolen in design, and of course the actual colouring itself is also a little bit unusual. We have kind of that mix of white as well as a little bit of dark brown. The benefits of using material is that we naturally have creases and wrinkles forming as it kind of fits to the body. But sadly, one of the downsides is the material which has been used, it does appear to be a few sizes too big. So as you can see here on this leg, the trouser does kind of hook over the rest of the shoe, so you can't really see too much of it. That said, I do think the stitching which has been done is actually considerably neat. So we do have this seam running down the entirety of the side. Flipping the figure around to the back, we even get the impression of pockets. That said, the pocket is rather difficult to see being made of exactly the same material to that of the rest of the trousers. This is simply a rectangular piece which has been stitched on. The very centre of the trousers, we do get the addition of the flies, and again this has been complemented with some rather precise yellow stitching. As per usual with these figures, this is attached together using one of these very tiny buttons. I mention the button because you are probably going to need to get incredibly used to rearranging every single component of this outfit due to the way that it's basically being thrown onto the figure's body. Moving back the waistcoat ever so slightly because it does have a habit of dangling down. Of course, on either side of the waist we do have the inclusion of a pocket. What is great to see is that these pockets are indeed functional, so you can of course incorporate them into a number of Fourth Doctor poses and utilise the accessories. One of the plus sides of having two big trousers is that the pockets are indeed quite big, so you can fit quite a number of accessories within them. I think they're alright. I think they certainly look the part and the patterning on them is quite nice, as the only big problem is there's simply too much of them. But I think certainly compared to some of the other components within this outfit, the trousers are certainly one of the better parts. One of the things that Big Chief figures always seem to do incredibly well is the sculpting detailing on the shoes. Now these are of course, as always, made of a solid plastic, however have some really intricate detailing within the sculpt, as well as some stunning paint application. The various panels within the shoe have been nicely picked out through the sculpting, featuring various different levels, really creating that three-dimensional effect. All of these intricate details have really been emphasised by a darkened wash which has been applied over the top of the light brown. In particular, this really draws attention to that stippled effect at the very tip of the boot. One of my favourite intricate details is the fact that we can actually see a little bit of stress within the boot itself where the material has been bent ever so slightly, much like how a normal shoe would after some use. And we also have some more intricate paint application towards the bottom, featuring a glossy black to represent the sole. Given that there does seem to be quite a lot of cutbacks within the material and tailoring for the costume itself, I was really surprised to see that the paint application details have actually continued onto the base of the shoe, including a continuation of that light brown design, even a blackened dark wash over the top to give the impression of the shoes being worn over time, as well as that black heel. And finally for the shoes, pulling up the trousers ever so slightly does of course reveal this little black peg section, which allows the shoe to connect into the ball joint. Now something of which I have noticed is that this joint does seem to be rather weak. So sadly this does mean sometimes when I have been posing this figure in a more dynamic position, the shoes have had a habit of popping off, which is a little bit frustrating. So on a positive note, I think that the shoes definitely look the part and the paint on them is absolutely superb. It's just a shame that the ball joint is ever so slightly weaker compared to other releases. So pulling up the Fourth Doctor's trousers ever so slightly reveals a outfit component that I do always love when it comes to 1/6 scale collector figures, and that is the inclusion of the partial socks, because it goes to show the lengths that sometimes can be put into these figures in order to make them look somewhat realistic. So this is basically just a elasticy piece of material, of course a black material, to give that impression of a sock. It slides over the ball joint and does of course give the impression that indeed Tom Baker is wearing socks. A little bit of a brief mention to articulation. Of course this uses the usual animatronics 1/6 scale body as a base, so there is lots of articulation, lots of ball joints, lots of variety, meaning that hopefully, as you've seen throughout this review, you can put the Fourth Doctor into various dynamic poses. Something that I have noticed throughout the process of filming this review is that the joints do appear to be getting a little bit more flexible as time goes on. So when I first opened the product it was rather sturdy. It still holds a pose, however just not as well as some of the previous figures that I've had. Something that I have noticed is that when you try and put the Fourth Doctor in more dynamic poses, the legs do seem to give over ever so slightly, and I've already mentioned the rather weak ankle joint there as well, meaning that it's not one of the most sturdiest figures going. Of course, one of the benefits is that you can purchase 1/6 scale bodies online if you decide to give this figure an entire revamp. I am tempted, I can't lie, although at the same time it shouldn't really need to come to that. So now that we've had a rather in-depth look at the Fourth Doctor's outfit, we're now going to move up to the head, firstly taking a look at the various head and hair components, and then moving on to the likeness. Due to this figure being one of the earlier releases as a part of the Big Chief collection, unlike some of the later releases such as the Third Doctor, the neck and the head are in fact completely separate pieces. Meaning, as per usual, you do have that neck join, as well as a rather unusual sculpting detail coming up the side. Rather coincidentally, but also quite lucky for this figure, we have the addition of the scarf. I think the fact that it is too big actually helps with hiding the neck, so it doesn't look too long here, and it also hides that head and neck divide. If you do get this figure, I definitely recommend making sure that the head is actually in place correctly, because otherwise you have an even bigger divide between the neck and the head, which makes the figure look a little bit unusual. The structure of this figure is exactly the same to the vast majority of Big Chiefs really, where we have the ball joint underneath to allow for lots of different poses with the head, and we also have this peg section which is normally connected to the base of the head itself and is normally quite difficult to remove, but this time it appears to have affixed itself to the top of the ball joint and is in fact rather difficult to remove from this. I think that this partially might be down to the plastic used. So the Fourth Doctor may not come with many accessories, but what he does come with is multiple hair pieces. So hairpiece 1 is of course the usual normal hair with no hat on top. Now as always with Big Chief hair, this is incredibly well sculpted, so we have lots of lovely details on this, lots of different strands of hair, lots of various curls. It has been sculpted in a rather random way, so as you can see here in kind of the silhouette we have lots of lovely bits poking out, making it look very natural. And of course we have some lovely paint application over the top of this as well, various different shades of both light and dark brown, and a little bit of a black wash in there as well, really emphasising those curls. And as we can see coming down to the bottom here, I do like the way that we also have various strands coming around to the side, which does of course make that seam connecting it to the actual face and the rest of the head a little bit more natural. Flipping the hairpiece upside down, of course we have that sculpting to connect it to the head, which is rather precise, but we also have this rather unusual kind of glossy black, almost oil-like paint. Don't quite know what that is, I think it might be the wash, I don't really know. But yeah, it is rather unusual. And this is also somewhat present on the other hairpiece, although as you can see there is in fact a bit where the paint has scratched away, so I'm hoping that that is just paint scratch underneath, and in fact the actual paint that we can see that is more visible, I'm hoping that that is a little bit stronger and can withstand a few bumps and knocks. So now moving on to the second more unusual headpiece, it is of course sculpted precisely to fit the Fourth Doctor's hat on top. So again, we have lots of different curls within this sculpt, and something of which that I've only just noticed when filming this review is that this hairpiece seems to be a lot more toned down compared to the full head of hair. So it is basically just one sculpt with perhaps an ever so slight light wash applied over the top. It is much more matte compared to the other one, just bringing that in. As you can see, it's much more glossy, much more interesting. So yeah, this one seems to be much less exciting. So it's a shame about the inconsistency, but it's only a minor gripe. Of course, the top of the head does have this giant bump on top in order to place the hat. This is just a little bit of positioning and you can get it in place rather nicely, and it is rather effective, although unlike the 11th Doctor from Series 7, this doesn't have any magnet or anything like that actually holding it to the rest of the head. But yeah, it sits on quite well, does wobble a little bit, but overall it certainly completes the look. There you go, that's an image that will haunt your mind for years. So naturally we will be looking at that likeness to Tom Baker a little bit later on, but showing you what the head looks like without the hairpieces in place, it is a rather unusual situation, I think it is fair to say. But I'll just have to draw your attention to this around the back. So this naturally would normally be hidden by the large chunk of hair added on top, but we have this unusual kind of smeared design. Again, it's the return of that unusual black kind of paint that can be seen on the inside of the head, and although this isn't usually visible, it's just stuff like this which make me think this would not be present on a Big Chief purchased from the official Big Chief website, and I feel like just because this is a Zavvi exclusive, little corners and little attentions to detail such as cleaning up the actual product have just gone not done. Little details like the hair splodges which just make me think care and attention hasn't actually gone into this product to make it again feel like a premium piece. So the hair does fit in a rather awkward angle, but once you've kind of clicked it in place, it does in fact look the part, so there we go, that fits in very well. And as for the other one, this is again a little bit easier to sit on top, it just kind of sits in place as so, you kind of need to move the head back into it. There we have sort of Tom with his bald patch on his head. I do sincerely apologise if you are watching this review on a large screen, because I imagine that this angle will be quite terrifying indeed, seeing Tom Baker staring down the lens. So yes, this likeness is one that did of course initially come with the original Big Chief Studios 4th Doctor. There was also an expansion pack which was a much more positive, smiling, grinning head. This one is the much more neutral head, and I think that Big Chief figures always cause a little bit of debate, especially when it comes to the likeness, because sometimes people like them, sometimes people hate them. I think in particular for this figure, it is much better to put this head onto a side profile, because then it looks a little bit less starey and kind of as if he's just looking off to the distance in a thoughtful manner. Either way, I am considerably impressed with the paint application on this face. It does look rather like Tom Baker. I think the head is obviously recognisable as Tom Baker. He has a very iconic appearance. We have those usual impressive details that you come to expect on 1/6 scale collector figures, including that lovely dampened wash which has been applied over the eyes, including some more intricate details surrounding the iris, including a lighter blue as well as a black to pick out the centre of the eye, and even that pinky red colour around the sides to kind of represent that more moist section of skin. We also have a little bit of shading surrounding the face, of course just underneath the eyes, really emphasising some of those eye bags and creases, a rather natural skin pigment, and in particular I really also like the subtle paint application that has been used on the eyebrows, as well as the sideburns, which are obviously rather noticeably a different colour, which may look a little bit odd, but is indeed rather faithful to Tom Baker's actual appearance within Doctor Who. They kind of have a more gingery tint to them. I actually think the head is alright. Aside from the fact that he is quite evidently staring down the camera, I think that he is rather natural looking, but it just looks a bit odd at certain angles. Especially given the contents of this review so far, I think it's very clear that cuts have been made to make this figure ultimately cheaper to produce, or at least that's what it certainly feels like. So I am quite grateful that overall the paint application on the face does still seem to remain quite impressive. I don't think it is to the same level as some of the more recent big chiefs, the likes of the 13th Doctor and the 3rd Doctor, but I do certainly think that likeness to Tom Baker is there. The bone structure in particular is really impressive. I love those little wrinkles around the sides of the nose and the mouth and even the chin, and I like the fact that the lips have been given a very light pink paint application, again not too over the top. But as you start to look closer at the sculpt, perhaps there's a few pigments and paint application which is a little bit absent, such as perhaps a little bit of a darker bit of paint work underneath where the nostrils are, because those seem to be pretty much the same colour as the rest of the face, and again perhaps some of that shading around the eyes might be a little bit too overdone. It's blended in as some of the later Big Chief releases, but I still like the look of the figure. So whilst we're taking a look at that likeness to Tom Baker, we may as well also take a look at the hat, since this kind of completes his look alongside the rainbow scarf. Now from what I can tell, this is basically exactly the same to the original release, so it has of course been sculpted in a solid light to brown plastic, although we do have a number of indentations and kind of material creases surrounding the hat to give it that more flexible appearance. Tilting the hat upside down, this is of course hollow, so that hairpiece can go in the very middle, although we don't have any additional detailing in there, such as the inside lining of the hat, which was present on the original 11th Doctor fez. The hat does also have a nice piece of material decoration, so we do have this banding here running all the way around the bottom. It's kind of a light grey, stands out quite a lot, and this is of course complete with this little bow at the front, which looks very nice indeed. The hat looks effective either on the 4th Doctor's head or even just as a standard accessory, as if he's wielding it, having just taken it off. And when accessories have been applied, I often say it really completes the look, and I think that for this figure in particular, that really counts, because it ultimately distracts from a lot of those weaker components within the costume. I think that when the figure is put together, you can somewhat make it look presentable. Those of you that have seen my previous Big Chief Studios figure reviews, you will know that the figure is essentially only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to purchasing this product, and there's normally a plethora of accessories and swappable hands and other stuff that the figure comes with to make it a collector's item. This time round we have a rather sparse set of accessories, merely featuring a sonic screwdriver and a bag of jelly babies. If you are someone who really does like the accessories of these figures, then I definitely recommend trying to track down the original Big Chiefs as opposed to the Zavvi versions. That really is easier said than done, especially where it comes to the 4th Doctor, because this was originally released many years ago and the original version is now worth a lot of money, safe to say. So sonic screwdriver itself is a really nice design. It authentically recreates the prop in a really accurate manner, so we have various different sections. It's thicker towards the bottom and then kind of ends up being thinner towards the top, so we have this overall silvery design. However, the big elephant in the room is the fact that this sonic screwdriver is not the 4th Doctor's. It is quite obviously the sonic screwdriver which came with the 8th Doctor, featuring the gold banding towards the bottom and not the usual 4th Doctor sonic screwdriver paint details, including the red emitter at the very top, as well as the black bullet section towards the back. I mean, it's a lovely design, but I'm just thinking in my mind again, how on earth has it got to this point where a completely different incarnation of the Doctor's sonic screwdriver has been packaged with a premium product and absolutely no one in the production process actually noticed this? Next up, as the 4th Doctor infamously says, would you like a jelly baby? Now this sculpt is in fact one that is very familiar to me, because it is exactly the same sculpt which came with the Big Chief 8th Doctor, although the paint application is ever so slightly different. So the bag has this lovely detailing, really makes it look like paper, lots of lovely creases in there, a little bit of a stippled sort of cut design towards the top, or makes it look like the paper has been bent into shape, and then of course in the top we have a plethora of different jelly babies which have been given a lovely highlight using some green, yellow and red paint application. I like the way this has also been sculpted into the bag as well, so yes, very nice and a good thing to pose with the Doctor. Next up for accessories, we get some silicone gel. What? We literally get hardly anything with this figure. I need to take a look at anything I can to fill this segment. Through the use of the posable hands, you can really create some dynamic poses with the silicone gel. And of course this allows you to recreate some absolutely iconic Doctor Who scenes such as this one, and if you've not seen the episode this is from, then you're not a fan. It's missing from the archive, it got deleted. I think I should probably move on from this segment, I'm losing all my mentality. Tell you what would be handy though to display with all of these accessories, it is indeed some posable hands. Now there are 4 hands that come with this figure, and the eagle-eyed amongst you will probably have noted that there is only 2 in front of the camera right now. Where is the other 2, do you ask? Well, what a silly question. They are indeed posed with Tom holding his silicone gel. No, I actually can't get them out. Basically, for those of you that do not know, on Big Chief figures there is this little ball joint here which connects the hand to the arm itself. Now this is a rather small piece, and usually you would get replacements. However, not with this figure. For some reason, when you try and remove the hand, it is incredibly stiff, and it's made of rather thin plastic, so naturally, I am concerned that this is going to snap. Now for me personally as a collector, if this ball joint was to snap, it wouldn't be too big of a deal. It would be at the minute because I'm at university and I'm nowhere near Hosty HQ, but because I've been collecting Big Chief figures for quite a number of years, I do have a few ball joints left around. But the fact that someone may purchase this product having never bought a Big Chief before, and then this ball joint inevitably snaps because it is considerably weak, they no longer can put the hands on the arms of this figure and it will look ridiculous. Also, I'm generally concerned about things snapping because I've experienced the plastic with this product, and a little bit of a spoiler for the future segment of this review, something does indeed snap, so you've got to stay tuned for that because it very much annoys me. So whilst we're here, the first hand attached to the body is a regular open palm position, which can be used to of course hold the 4th Doctor's jelly babies. Hand 2 attached to the body is one of 2 more posed hands in order to hold the sonic screwdriver accessory. Now moving on to the alternative hands, we have yet another posed hand. This one is in a slightly more pointing manner, again probably best to hold the sonic with this. And the 4th and final hand is a more dramatic pose, an open palm position. It's almost Peter Capaldi-esque, but less dramatic. This gives a good look at the hand detailing, so you do have a little bit of a wash applied over the top to highlight some of the wrinkles within the palm of the hand as well as the fingers. And then of course we also have various bits of bone structure within the sculpt as well, looking very impressive indeed. I imagine this will look great on the figure itself once posed. Unsure if it is just this figure, but I do think that the paint application overall on the hands is not exactly as sharp as some of the previous Big Chiefs I've collected. In particular, we have that unusual kind of pinky highlight around the nails, which does draw attention to them, but I've seen some of the hands on other people's figures, which does literally look like he's wearing nail varnish, so it's kind of a sloppy paint application. Not too bad, it's definitely passable. However, sadly, one of the big issues with this hand, which I think is one of the reasons why it can't be removed from the ball joint, is the fact that these are meant to be flexible in order to hold the accessories, but these are some of the sturdiest Big Chief hands I've ever had on a figure. They don't move at all, so if you want to hold the accessories within them, it is very stiff indeed, and I wouldn't recommend pushing too hard because the fingers might snap. So yes, again, a little bit of a shame because the quality control doesn't seem to have been well done here. More positive note to lighten up this section of the review, something that I thought I would mention was, whilst waiting for this product to be released for about 5,000 years, Big Chief decided to start doing a thing called Kit Bash Corner, where you could basically get loose ends from old releases. And most of this didn't really concern me because I've got quite a lot of the older Doctor Who figures, but all of a sudden they started to do a few of the old 4th Doctor accessories that were probably found in a cupboard somewhere. So I managed to pick up one of the more exciting accessories from the original release, and that is the key to time. With the little cool tracker, you can in fact take this top piece out to go into the Doctor's hand, which is quite cool, and you also get a little segment which can also be put in, and then you have the main cube there as well. Now this is a seconds one, so as you can see there is a little bit of a unusual shape on the inside that isn't meant to be there, but yes, I thought that would be quite cool to display alongside this Doctor, although naturally it doesn't come with this product. Whilst we are on the subject of accessories, with the 12th Doctor, if you have that figure, either the regular 12th Doctor or the Connex Red Velvet exclusive, he comes with a little yellow yo-yo, which is very, very similar again to the one that came with the original 4th Doctor release. So through having some of the previous Big Chiefs, you can somewhat accumulate together a little collective of accessories. Per all Big Chief 1/6 scale Doctor Who collector figures, we have the addition of a base which is in 2 parts, being the main base itself, as well as the actual tripod piece to hold the figure. This itself is exactly the same sculpt to the vast majority of previous releases, however usually the base is a dark blue. For the Zavvi exclusive releases, they've decided to spray them silver. I don't know if this is going to be a regular thing moving forward or if it's solely for the Zavvi exclusives. Now, something that you may have noticed in the previous shot is that I still had the cling film on. I've just taken this off and I've been greeted by this absolutely gorgeous black base design with the logo nicely standing out there at the bottom with this lovely white finish. This is really smart. I actually like it more than the usual releases. Despite the base looking visually ever so slightly different to your usual Big Chief, it still possesses exactly the same feature. And that is by flicking this little switch on the back, the Doctor Who logo will light up. There we go. Isn't that nice? As per usual, even though this is a light, it's not exactly lighting up too much. It certainly doesn't light up the figure, it just lights up these letters. But switching over into darkness, it does look pretty cool and it certainly stands out. Although when in natural light, it doesn't particularly have too much effect. Now, after that really complimentary bit of footage that I've just said about how lovely the base is, it snapped in my hand. I'm disgusted, quite frankly. Bear in mind that I've had these bases now in my collection for quite a number of years, and this has never happened. And the peg has literally just snapped off. Literally, I put it in once, and then I just tried to ever so slightly adjust it just to ensure that it was in right. And yeah, it's completely come away in the hand. A little bit of a close-up on the base. There's that piece of plastic kind of stuck in there. And there is the bottom of the peg. So yeah, absolutely excellent. Meaning that now, obviously, with this being the support for the figure, this base is rendered completely useless. The fact that I've literally had this in my hand for 1 second, and obviously I'm a collector, so I am fairly delicate when it comes to my merchandise, rather than, say, a younger Doctor Who fan, perhaps, who may be a little bit more brutal with their merch. I was very careful, and this has literally just snapped. So yeah, again, a premium product, and something of which that I've paid £200 for, and that's not acceptable. That is absolutely shocking, quite frankly. I've had a little bit of a think about this product. Zavvi is going to be sending me a replacement base, so that is all good, and if anything, the least they can do, given that the product is actually broken. However, I've realised that sending said replacement base is going to be utterly pointless anyway. Of course, frustratingly, nothing is going to change the fact that this base is made out of a plastic that ultimately it shouldn't be made from, so I've just taped it together for now. I'm going to glue it together, and I'm never going to use the replacement base as an actual base, because if I do, it's basically going to break as soon as I put it together, or is going to break at some point in the future. When the base actually decides to function correctly, it's meant to look something like this. So you have the base at the bottom and of course the usual tripod with the crotch cradle at the top. As always, the top of the tripod can be adjusted to basically correspond with the height of your figure. However, due to this one being broken, it won't be supporting anything. So either way, let's face it, it is a rubbish situation. The only proper solution would be if Zavvi was to reproduce all the bases for the Zavvi exclusives again from scratch with proper flexible plastic, but let's face it, that is not going to happen. I don't think I am in a minority when it comes to this problem. I have seen a number of people have it already, so I don't think this is something that is a rare occurrence. Either way, it should be something that was stamped out within the quality control process. So if you do get this product, basically be careful, but also be warned it is likely to snap. I think by this point in the review, you might be sensing a little bit of a theme, and it's just that things are passable to some extent. However, it's clear that quality hasn't been at the forefront when producing this product, and it's very, very clear that corners have been cut, and it does very much feel like a figure that you would get as kind of like a sample, and then they would then send feedback and go, right, the hands need to be made more flexible, the ball joints need to be more useful and actually do the job, the clothing needs tightening up, the ball joints on the legs need a bit more tightening up, that leg is longer than the other, it shouldn't be. It's stuff like that. It's things that should have been polished and refined and should not be existing on this final product that sadly the buyer is now needing to put up with. Chief Studios' defence to this is that basically they've handed over essentially the blueprints to make these collector figures, and it is Zavvi who have sourced the materials, Zavvi who have gone and made them in the factory, and therefore this quality control issue resides with Zavvi, which I fully understand. They are the ones that have produced this product. Fair enough, from a logistical perspective, it is them who is to blame. But ultimately, I, as a customer, don't see Zavvi's logo anywhere near this product. I simply ordered this product from Zavvi. If I purchase a product from Amazon, I do not expect it to be made by Amazon. The fact that when I look at this packaging, the first thing that I see is the Big Chief Studios logo, and I do not see the Zavvi logo, it is the point that their quality control, their mistakes, and their negligence in making this product, this does not reflect badly on Zavvi. This reflects badly on Big Chief. Because at the end of the day, the only reason why I know that Big Chief have allegedly not had any involvement with the creation of this product is because I, as a customer, have gone beyond to actually find out more details about this product. If I'm a regular person who purchases this without that care about what's actually gone on behind the scenes, again, all I see is the Big Chief logo. And by purchasing this product, if this was my first Big Chief, I quite frankly would be shocked, and I also would be put off buying any more. Safe to say that this Doctor Who product review has been quite an unusual one. I think if you are wanting a 4th Doctor Big Chief for your collection, this figure will certainly do the job, but don't expect the product to satisfy the retail price. On-camera aspects of this figure look good. The likeness, albeit a little bit starey, certainly looks like Tom Baker. The outfit components come together well to somewhat represent the TV costume. But it's as you start to look closer that the disappointment starts to set in for me personally. What frustrates me most is that quite a lot of these issues could have been easily rectified, from packaging the figure correctly, using better glue on the buttons, and supplying basic spare components and correctly painted accessories. All of these things could have easily been rectified simply through a little bit of product review. Other issues are much more serious. There seems to be a complete lack in consideration to actual quality, such as basic quality control checks, which could easily identify clear issues, such as the slapdash waistcoat stitching and the absence of buttons. The questionable material choices are also a big letdown. Presenting a base support which will inevitably fail all adds to the fact that this figure does not feel like a premium piece of Doctor Who merchandise. I think this is the first ever time that I've said this in a Doctor Who product review, but I do not recommend purchasing this product for the recommended retail price. After waiting for this product for quite a long time with very unhelpful customer service, the entire experience has been an unpleasant one from start to finish. All of this has made the failures of this figure feel all the more frustrating, and ultimately overshining most of the figure's good points. As I've stated throughout this review, Zavvi have been responsible for the overall production of this figure, with Big Chief essentially providing the blueprints. Regardless of this, from a customer's perspective, there has been a complete disregard for the customer themselves, cutting corners and seriously making me question if I want to continue buying this series in the future. Within my previous reviews of the 3rd and 13th Doctors, I was overall really impressed with those products, but still highlighted how essential it was for Big Chief Studios to really polish up some of those quality control issues, as it's failing to meet the overall standard that I expect as a customer for a product at this recommended retail price. This figure takes that to the extreme. For £200, I do not expect weak plastic, missing components, botched stitching and poor quality control. Caution is certainly advised when purchasing this product, and I certainly hope that yours doesn't have the same avoidable issues as my own. Ultimately, this figure is passable, providing that you don't look at it too closely or touch it. I imagine it will be a sufficient display piece, but for me it fails to meet my expectations as a premium collector's item. I really hate doing negative reviews, and I like to try and see the positives in things when they are there. But there is simply so many issues with this product where I think it is really difficult to actually see those positives. I do in fact have a number of the future Big Chiefs on order, and I sincerely hope that they return to a very high standard of quality in the future, because frankly, if this disappointment continues, then I will no longer be collecting this series. And with that in mind, even if Big Chief Studios do return to a higher level of quality in the future, there is still no avoiding the fact that this is a fundamental flaw within the Big Chief series, a significant failure as a product, and something of which as a customer I feel incredibly let down by and frustrated that simply this figure didn't have enough care and attention put into its production. So thanks for watching, have a nice day, goodbye.